in properly the amount of work that he has done. I want to thank Avi Garson also for all of his dedication. Of course, the Montefiore Endowment and the S&P and Dangor Education and all of the people who were involved with that, which also took a good deal of effort and work, but we're very grateful for all of that work that has been done. And may it be, Yehi Ratzon, that all of it should emerge into blessing, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it should find favor in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, and we should be zocheh to study Torah. I want to, before I begin, I know that all of us, I'm sure that all of us have had half of our hearts, if not more, occupied on what's going on in Eretz Israel. And so I am saying these short divrei Torah that I want to share with you as an opening to Professor Zohar's very interesting shiur. He's speaking on Rabbi Israel Moshe Hazan, is that right? Right? Which is, I mean, what a figure. Rabbi Israel Moshe Hazan is, a towering figure in our recent history. And so I'm so excited for you to be able to learn from Professor Zohar tonight about him and about his thought. But we certainly want to, we're keeping our minds on what's going on in the Eretz Hamda, in the Eretz HaKodesh. And so I want to say these words as a dedication to all of Ahenu Bet Israel that are in Eretz Israel, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect them and watch over them and bring peace to the Aretz and to our nation. I'm only speaking shortly, and therefore I only have a very short idea. But this idea, this concept, I believe, is the core of what it is that we are aiming to do with the Habura, and that is very simply that the Habura is not about information. It is not about data. It is about framework. And there is a huge difference between the two. Now, of course, you will learn a great deal of data. But this is data that if you really wanted to, you can learn by opening the books and listening to lessons and so on by many of the people that we are very grateful and honored to be able to have teach on this platform. It may take a bit more effort on your part, but we would be very happy to recommend books and to recommend lectures and so on, and you go ahead and do that. This is not just a platform of convenience. There is something more that comes by being engaged with this virtual and in various places and situations, physical Bet Midrash. And that is this. If you spend your time and you dedicate yourself to learning and listening to what is being offered here at the Habura, you will not just gain information and data, you will gain a lens through which to see the entire Torah and Judaism. You will gain a framework through which you will be able to understand and interpret all of the data points that you will ever learn. And if you are here, even though you may not be able to articulate it, or you may not have thought to articulate it, maybe you have, it is essentially what it is that you're looking for, I would imagine. What you're looking for is an understanding of what it means to be a thinker in the perspective of what we are calling classical Sfarad. What was the way that Harambam saw the Torah? What was the way that Rabbi Israel Moshe Hazan saw the Torah? What was the way that Rabbi Ben Sion Uziel saw the Torah? I'm sure there were nuances of difference between them. I mean, they lived in different generations and in different years and times. But what was their way? What was the lens that they used to see the Torah that they studied in the world in which they lived? And what my desire is, my impetus, my drive for contributing what it is that I contribute to this endeavor, to this project, to this Bet Midrash, is to provide that lens in a way that is in your grasp, to bring the tremendous toil that otherwise would be required down to your space, to earth, so that you're able to access it. Because to me, it's as though there is this, say imagine there's a physical lens in a nice protected pocket that is buried somewhere that only very few people knew how to access or had access to. And then suddenly it kind of lost its presence and its direction and the awareness that it was even there. And what I want to do is I want to take it out, I want to shine it, and I want to present it to all of you. And that's really what it is that this is about. Nothing else. I mean, there are maybe derivative elements of it. So sure, you'll learn about Rabbi Israel Moshe Hazan, which is wonderful because he was wonderful. But there's an added element to that. You're learning about Rabbi Israel Moshe Hazan tonight because when you learn about him and you learn about the way that he wrote and he thought, you will begin to put together that lens. And every element of study on this platform, that is my dedication to you as the Rosh Bet Midrash. Every element of study on this platform will help fill in and create clarity for that framework and lens. Now, I want to say a bit about why that's important. Because all of this may be intuitive and maybe that I'm speaking to the choir. But as I always say at Lauderdale Road and at Bevis Marks when I'm on the pulpit, I've said this many times, I believe in preaching to the choir. Because it's the choir who needs to hear this. And it's important that the choir knows why they're singing and in which framework they're singing. And so this is what I think is important to understand about framework in general, about concept, context, lens in general. There is no inherent value to isolated data points. I could bring you a line from the Talmud and I could give it to 10 different people. I could give it to my friends in my interfaith relations. I can give it to my imam friends and I can give it to my Anglican priest friends. And they will interpret it in different ways based on their frameworks. And their interpretations would be false. Even though they may be good, they maybe have insights, but they are not interpreting it within the context it was meant to be seen in. And that is very important for us to understand. Now, when we talk about within Israel and the various strands of perspective within Israel, the various frameworks within the Jewish people, I wouldn't say that the way that they see it necessarily is wrong if it's not the classical Sephardi way of seeing it. As we know, we have great tradition in Israel that there are more than one way to see the Torah, more than one way to see the Torah. But what you're here for is our way, this specific way, the way of our fathers and grandfathers, the way of our ancestors. That, as I say, is a lens that has been kind of lost and left aside. And what I'd like to do is to be able to represent it to you in whatever capacity I can. And I believe that we have an absolutely unique opportunity to be able to do that because the online element of this Bet Midrash allows us to draw the greatest teachers from all over to teach you. Professor Zohar speaking to you from Israel tonight. You will have teachers to speak to you from New York. You'll have teachers to speak to you from London. You'll have teachers to speak to you from other countries and other cities. And how beautiful is that? And how exciting is that? I'm excited. I'm certainly excited. Sina's excited that there's more than 30 members. I'm excited that we get to bring teachers from all over the place to be able to teach you and teach you in the best possible way. Not that he's not excited about that, but you know what I mean. I just like to pick on him every now and then because I love him. So the important thing is to recognize before you start any of the learning, remember that more important than any detail you study, any data point that you study, is the framework within which you process it. the way in which you see it. In Hebrew, the word for that is derech. It's a way. There are many ways one can do something. The way is what makes the difference as to the quality and value of what is done. It's the same thing that we would perhaps, use or express when we say to somebody, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And any of us who have been in such a situation know precisely how important that is. There are times where people can say things in a certain way and that not even be a tone of voice, just a facial expression that makes all the difference in terms of its meaning. You know what we call the nonverbals. The nonverbals make all the difference in the world in terms of what something means, do they not? A simple tone of voice going up or down at the end of a sentence makes all the difference in terms of what it is that it means to us, does it not? Of course it does. Do not underestimate the framework. Do not underestimate the way, the derech, and the value it has on the information that you will study. And what we are presenting here is not data points as much as a way. It is why I want you to consider the following 2 points, and then, of course, I will hand it over, and that is this. The Torah itself is extremely concerned about this. And there are 2 ways that we know that the Torah itself, I mean the written Torah itself, is extremely concerned about this. How do we know this? We know this from the following 2 ways. First way is that there is a very strict rule as to how it is that a Sefer Torah must be written. And that is that it's not just that the letters need to be shaped a certain way. The graphic presentation of the Torah must be preserved in a certain way. What do I mean by graphic presentation? Any of you who have seen the inside of a Sefer Torah, and there's no reason why any of you should not have seen the inside of a Sefer Torah, whether you're man or woman, you should have been able to see the inside of a Sefer Torah. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why there is a halacha to show the Sefer to the Kahal is so that the Kahal can see the Sefer Torah, right? So you will have seen at the very least at a glance the inside of a Sefer. And you will have noticed that the Sefer has paragraphs. In other words, there are blocks of writing with gaps of no writing and then blocks of writing again. Yes? Yes? Can I get some head nods? Thank you. Yes. So you know what I'm talking about. There's Sefer Torah. It's graphic. It has a very strict graphic presentation. Why strict? Because, listen to this, the halacha is, the law is that if a Sefer Torah is meant to have a specific gap with no writing. I'm not even talking about the writing. Writing is pristine and perfect. The letters are expertly crafted. But there is in one place a gap that is meant to run to the end of the line with no more writing. We call that a pituha. And instead, it was written as a gap in the middle, and writing was carried up again on that same line inappropriately, meaning not according to our tradition. The entire Sefer Torah is pasul. It is invalid for use. It doesn't have the same holiness and sanctity of a Sefer Torah. You hear what I'm saying? Everybody follow what I just said? If the gap is not an appropriate gap according to our tradition, the entire Sefer Torah loses its kedusha. It is no longer a Sefer Torah. And why is that? Because the graphic presentation of the Sefer is essential. You say, well, what is the graphic presentation? Well, there's a lot in the graphic presentation, but this is one minor element which makes the difference in terms of the holiness of a Sefer and not the holiness of a Sefer. When you have a gap that is meant to be blank to the end of the line, right? So I have writing to the middle of the line, gap till the end, and then the new line starts on the next line, that is an indication that the relationship between the 2 paragraphs are further than if it were a closed gap. on the same line. Yeah, I understand I'm asking you to do all of this visually in your heads, but you following what I'm saying? A way to recognize this is Roman numeral outlines. So one Roman numeral and a second Roman numeral, right? When I'm ready to go to Roman numeral 2, which means that I'm ready to talk about a new subject or a new section of a subject, is equivalent essentially to a Sefer Torah having a gap all the way to the end of the line. You follow? If the gap is in the middle and picks up writing on that same line, it's like a letter under one Roman numeral. It's a sub-element of a already open concept or situation, idea. If that's messed up, the whole way I understand the Sefer is messed up. You follow me now? Contextual presentation, not the words, not the data points. The contextual presentation of the data makes or breaks a Sefer Torah. And I'm going to close with this, with 1 minute left. One of my most favorite lines, and there's so many, from Rambam. Rambam writes the following in his Pirush Mishnah, in his explanation, his commentary on the Mishnah. This is at the very end, the last lines of his commentary on the tractate of Berachot, the first tractate of the Mishnah. And he says the following. He says, Darki tamid, my way always. B'chol makom, sheyesh eze remez b'inyanei emunah, avayer mashu. Anytime there's even a hinting of the system of our belief, right, the way we think, I will pause to explain something about it. No matter what issue we're dealing with, I will stop and start to talk a bit about that. He says, why? Ki hashuv etzli. Rambam says it's more important to me lehazbir yesod miyesodot, to explain the foundation fundamentals of our dat, of our whole way of Torah, mikol davar acher shani melamed, than anything else that I teach. And Rambam taught it all. It wasn't a bit of Torah Rambam didn't teach. So you hear what he's saying? He's saying it's more important for me to teach you the fundamental principles, the frameworks, the way in which we think, than it is for me to teach any piece of information that I will ever teach you. So, with that, welcome to the Haburah, because it is an exciting trip and we are on an intriguing path. It is a way that belongs to you. It is a way that lies in waiting for you to come and claim. It is the way of your ancestors, and it is your right and privilege to be able to come and discover it and to make it part of your life, to use it as a lens through which to see all that you see. So I wish you Hatzlacha Rabbah, and I'm sure that we will see each other soon again. And if I don't see you before Shavuot, I wish you all a Chag Shavuot Sameach. What a wonderful time of year to launch a Bet Midrash. And I hope that you enjoy the Professor Zohar's presentation on the B'Yisrael Moshe Hazan. And I see that here he is. Reb Tzvi, Hashem Yishmerechem. Good to see you.